All right, welcome to another episode from the Chart Readers. It's a real hot day in LA, and it is actually a hotter day in the market, which is what we love, right? And there are so many tickers I want to talk about. Got a little bit of a late start on today's recording, so I'm gonna skip the longer than normal opening thoughts. I'm gonna do my intro really quickly, and then I'm immediately gonna get into some tickers. They might be a little shorter coverage than I normally do, but I think right now everything revolves around the NASDAQ, right? Comp Q, NASDAQ Composite, all right, and S&P 500. Okay, clearly Dow Jones matters, but hey, you know me, I love tech a little bit more, and really all of these are pretty much tech stocks that we're going to cover today, right? So, very important that both of these indices give us the confirmation tomorrow that we need. All right, that's really what we're looking for. But if that happens, oh man, some real good things can happen. And you've heard me say it a bunch of times, and I think today was a beautiful example of it. A normal day on a market index should be like zero point 0.3, zero point 0.5. If you can go substantially bigger than that, all of a sudden you're going to see some pretty crazy double digits almost across everything, right? And it felt like most of the normal names that were getting 16, 15, 20, 30% we're back to it, and that was a beautiful thing, right? So excuse me, sorry, getting a little under the weather, but doing my best here. But yeah, it's important that the indices do well. They are setting up the best that they've been in what, arguably a month, right? So this is what we've been looking for. This is why I say sometimes it's worth being patient, right? Let's see if we get more. Let's see how much we get and all those kind of open questions, right? But excited for tomorrow, excited for the week, but still a little back pocket caution just in case the moving averages say no, all right? So um, before we do go any further and I give you more of my thoughts and opinions, what are we going to do? Same thing we always do, right? We'll take a look at the daily and the weekly to see how things are setting up short term. We have our five moving averages. There are horizontal support and resistance lines that I do draw manually myself. And then when we are done up here, we'll use the MACD, RSI, and volume as our lower indicators. Hey, really quickly, if you can, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video online with your friends. Comment good or bad if you disagree. Look, anything you can do helps so much with these YouTube algorithms. But for real, just being here, giving me your time, oh, I'm so grateful for it, all right? So we'll take a good look at BBAI. And look, this is something I'd mentioned not that long ago. The NASDAQ has these really nice channels, right? A channel is nothing more than the distance between two lines. You can use moving averages, you can use some horizontal draws, whatever, right? I like the channel between the 8 and the 20, the channel between the 20 and the 200, and then obviously the channel between there. From there, you break all five and you fly, right? One thing I was looking for, and I mentioned this on the quant stocks, right? And it's when the zoom in was a little better. I liked that spacing. I liked that spacing. And one thing we look for is finding stocks that kind of mimic the spacing of the index, the channels of the index, and then it should do the same thing if it goes up, or unfortunately, it'll do the same thing if it goes down, right? I like BBAI and I like the channels that we have here. Look, we did a real good job with most of this. There's still a nice little leg all the way up to like what 390 give or take for this channel to complete, and then after that there's another beautiful channel all the way from there to there, right? So there is good spacing with BBAI. There is a lot of red that can turn to green, right? So the opportunity is here with BBAI, right? I think I'm kind of ignoring the MACD and RSI still. Again, I'm liking what I'm seeing on the indices, but still not enough. I think what really is going to matter the most is moving averages, or our moving averages, and volume. Okay, so with volume, clearly the best we've seen in a good while, but still not breaking that 50-day line, right? So to me, if NASDAQ can follow through tomorrow, right? We gap up over the 20. It was a little bit more of a doji in the beginning of the day, right? So I like the way it closed. Still not a super big candle, but that's a good close. That's a monster 2 point something percent for sure. I think there's a real good chance that this continues to right there. Maybe even gives us a little kiss of my golden line, but I think the goal is either we're going to come up to 18.4 or we're gonna maybe come down to 17,900. All right. If we continue up, really, BBAI and the rest are going to continue on up, right? And we would go from here to hopefully right there, right? If NASDAQ comes down, I could see BBAI kind of coming back down to 330, right? So I think there's more good up than down, but hey, if we lose that 330, let's call it roughly. Right, sorry, I got real quiet right there as I was looking. I'm trying to get exact. I'd call it 320. It's a little tight right there. I think if it loses 320, I think there's a real bad chance that it would come down to 270. Right, and again, Nasdaq goes up, so will BBAI. Nasdaq goes down, so will BBAI. Right, so I talked about the earnings gap down, making it maybe tough for this thing to go on up a couple videos ago. I still in the back of my head think that, but hey, again, I like the channels, and when Nasdaq was really bad and then turns to good, I think people will quickly forget things, especially if we come back to 120, 130 million shares, right? So that's really what I would love to see. I think volume will be very important here. I think the bare bone minimum is about 80, 88 mil. Let's call it 90 million. That's the minimum we want. So if I want 90 million shares in a 7-hour day, we need about 13 million shares an hour. If we're over 26 million shares by that second hour, real good things will happen here. Okay, and obviously that's 50% of today in 2 hours, right? So cool. Where's the weekly? Look, the weekly says it's going to be a little bit tough to get over that 390 that we just talked about on the daily, right? That is the 200. The 20 is just above it, but there's a good chance it even actually goes to 5 on this thing, right? So I think for now we're going to use this 430 as our next immediate target. That's a nice little move from there. And then obviously to me, yeah, if you can get over these two, I would ignore that and just go to that, right? But again, it's all about NASDAQ. It has nothing to do with the tickers we're looking at. It's the index that we're watching, right? So SoundHound. This is a nice channel right here, right? This is about a 20% channel. We're sitting down here at 10 something. I see my lines all the way up at 12 something. You're adding 20% right there, right? That was a nice Friday candle. Friday holds support. We've actually done it a couple times. Friday gets me over the 8 and the 20. Today's a doji. It's an interesting little doji, right? But that's a decent setup for me, right? If Nasdaq does well, it should be able to carry this up. Again, volume's still look, MACD and RSI look good. I'm going to say it one more time just in case you fast forwarded to right here. I'm ignoring these, all right? I know Nasdaq is setting up the nicest it's been. I've said that at least a couple times. We've never been to this line in over a month, right? This is still an overall downtrend, right? This is still under the 50. Well, we're over it as of Monday, right? But this is still like battling the 50 on the weekly, right? So to me, I'm still a little more worried. Hey, I might be wrong, right? And there are people in the Discord. Man, there was a chart earlier. Give me one second, right here. There are still people that say it's mirroring and I'm wrong, and maybe it's going to be a nice little continuation, right? Like, hey, I'm telling you, I love when people say I might be wrong. I'm just some dude, right? So never disagree. I mean, never hesitate to disagree, right? But yeah, I'm still a little not sure if we're going to get over the 200 very well. I really am not sure if we're going to get over those. But hey, if we can just even make a move to them, that's what I'm looking for, right? So SoundHound, give me just a little more. I see a 20% move. Basically, you can even use my golden line if you want. Otherwise, I see us basically coming right back down to 960. And again, NASDAQ goes up, so will this. NASDAQ goes down, so will this. If we lose, yeah, we can even just use this 930. If we lose 930, it will be a quick fall to 850 right there. All right, so let me look at guard force. I know I saw someone ask me about that in the Discord right there. Guard force ain't bad. Guard force ain't bad. Let me zoom in. Let's get rid of that candle right there. What does volume look like? Man, volume's still tough. We need a lot more volume here, but hey, this is a nice red. It's a decent attempt at trying to get over the 8 and the 20. It looks like the 8, my golden cross here, right? So there's a real chance that this comes to a buck 40, and that's actually a 20% move right here. It's the same channel as we see with SoundHound, right? So I think that's also well worth looking at our looking at tomorrow. Again, I'm not really looking at the weekly at this. I'm not really talking about MACD and RSI, right? Like to me, it's very, very important to stay daily, to focus on the moving averages and volume for now, right? So I'm going to call this the AI sector. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. I wanted to talk about RR. Excuse me. I wanted to talk about NAC and I wanted to talk about FFAI. These are going to be the last three. That's kind of a weird combo, but why not? RR is a decent setup. So unlike a lot of stocks that we've been looking at, this is actually trying to get over all five moving averages. Not even the NASDAQ can do that or say that. This thing's barely over one of them. I know we gapped up and physically over two, but like I don't even know if we've actually taken the eight just yet, right? So it is very, very impressive to see RR actually over all five moving averages. I don't know if you fast forwarded or not, but this has been the best at trying to get over at the minimum, kind of live at the 50-day line for volume, right? So volume is actually impressive. Moving average position is actually pretty impressive. Oh, I think someone's at my door. Hold on one sec. Is there a kitty? Hi. How you doing? I'm recording for the people. So yeah, again, I think to me this is an interesting one right here, right? Again, obviously this is just a single candle. We need confirmation, right? But if we can confirm, my next line is all the way up there, right? I think it's probably worth noting 325. 325 is basically 50% of that, almost the top of that right there, right? So 325, 330, I would keep that in the back pocket, but the goal is break all five and fly. Otherwise, we will not get over this, right? And I would basically use... So I guess I would first use 240, but I think to me, and you kind of saw, that's where I started to click, right? I think 220 is actually what the rejection would be if I had to guess, right? Because I think that being a fake out, if it is, would quickly go away and it would probably just come back under, right? But hey, there's some decent things happening here, and that's a nice bounce off the 200 moving average. Again, if NASDAQ goes up, there's great spacing here, right? Again, it's over all of them. Hi, baby. Otherwise, like I said, if NASDAQ goes down, even with this being above all the moving averages and better volume, I still would give my respect to the NASDAQ and say this just probably can't escape it, right? From there, I want to look at FFAI. So FFAI caught my attention at the very end. Look, I clicked, I normally don't go into the lower time frames, right? But in the last hour, right? 15, 30, 45, 1 hour in a 15-minute candle, right? Literally, if I click, excuse me, if I click on the 1 hour, boom, you see all the volume came. This is the entire day trading. It came right at the end, right? It came right at the last, like, boom, right? That caught my attention. That was really, really interesting to say the least. Someone on the Discord actually asked just before I started recording too. I'll get to MLGO as well for sure. But 166, that is what I'm calling my safest line. I drew this a long time ago. This is probably an FFIE line, in all honesty. I haven't looked at FFAI since the ticker change, right? So to me, what's important is breaking the 100 moving average. The 100 moving average is sitting at 151. That's what like needs to break. And hey, if your risk tolerance is a little higher than mine, you can make an argument for like 155, right? 11 cents lower. But yeah, if this breaks, and you can see how hard that 100 moving average is since as I zoom out, right? We've tried, excuse me, sorry. We've tried. We're hopefully going to try again, right? But that's a no joke of a line. If we can get over that, man, there's a lot of red to green, red to green. That could pretty nicely fill, right? There was a question about MLGO, and I will just throw it in here real quick. So, look. I mean, a number of things, right? You can actually say this is almost indicative of the FFAI chart. Maybe it was a good thing that I did show this, right? That same struggle with the 100 became a lot better of an attempt. And hey, look, in my sincere opinion, when a stock looks like this, it's really, really hard to gauge that the next one's going to go up and stuff, right? When volume on Thursday was 2 million, you can see it in the box right there. And then volume on Friday was 4 million. Yeah, it's a 2x, but it's not like a crazy spike. It's really, really hard to like think there's going to be 300 million coming on Monday, right? So to me, it's a lot less about just, hey, how do I catch this? There were easy ways to trade this. And again, I didn't do it, trust me, but this is my advice. Number one, I would have just waited for five. Get me over all the moving averages and hey, break all five and fly, right? In this case, break all four, because I don't even think, oh no, the fifth one's up there, right? But get over these four and I'll believe we're going to start moving up, right? If four and look when you look at that basic five number, that's a little higher, but right around 492, that's the top of this guy. Even 492 is a little higher. I think that was probably the line. 466 was probably the entry line on this. All right, because 466 would have put you over the 8 and the 20. That 8 kept going because we obviously went 400%, right? But once you got over 50% of this big candle, and you can see it's actually the top of that right there too, right? 466 to the penny. What's the bottom here? What's the bottom there? Look at that. It's that one. 464 if you're looking at the second line. That's the open right there, right? So that was a big line to break. Once that went, there was some big money to be made. Look, this is the next one, right? The top of the biggest candle to the left. If you just waited for 630, 640, 638 is where I'm clicking. That's basically 50% of this candle as well, and it's basically the top of that candle right there, right? So even if you just waited for that from there to there, again, so much red, red, red to green, 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 right? So my next two expectations, if it goes up, are going to be that right there, and then this 200 moving average line, which is sitting at 27 flat, right? If you're looking in the box over there. From there, excuse me, sorry, you got to start looking into some smaller time frames. Okay, you gotta see what volume looks like, right? This thing is still nicely going over the 8MA, even on the hourly, right? So on the way down, I would be worried about 11.99, right? If this starts to lose 12 bucks, that's where worry comes. Otherwise, hey, we're still nicely over the 8, right? And look, that's regular hours. As you look into after hours, you can see you go away from the 8, you come to the 8, you go away from the 8. I don't really like these dojis much, but hey, maybe it's still going to just wait until it comes. Otherwise, it might work its way down, and yeah, 12 bucks is still the number. Don't lose 12 on MLGO, and there's a real good chance that we continue tomorrow to, like I said, what was that line? 27, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's that right there. I would maybe draw a line right there at 22.55, maybe. But yeah, I think to me that's just a lot of red, 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 and the 100. I'm gonna delete that line. The 200 moving average is basically right there, right? So if you lose 12, okay, if you lose 12, from there you're basically gonna be looking at 8. And then after 8, yeah, I would stop at 8. I think 8 is probably the 1-2 down, right? When I look at the daily, yeah, half of today is about 8. I was clicking at 760. That's 780 right there, right? So, cool. That's my thoughts on MLGO. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinion. Look, you know I'm not here to talk about squeeze and meme. Like that's not my thing, right? We're looking to try to see a sustainable and replicatable, I don't know how to say that word. I always struggle with that thing. We want to find a strategy that always works, right? And to me, a squeeze is a hope, and I hope it's on the ticker I'm at. We're trying to just bring some logic into some silliness, right? So last one I wanted to cover was NAC. This one's an interesting one. This was the drill baby drill ticker. All right, we talked about it a lot on the Discord, especially near the elections, right? So you can see these are February. So around here is the election, right? So NAC might be good here. Here was a nice little tranche of other oil tickers. There was a couple other ones. We were talking about mineral plays, right? This is all just early election timings. From here, just around February, it felt like 90 cents was going to come. Man, it just obviously did such a good job so far, right? And really, as you zoom out, that's where things really start to get interesting, right? And you know, I'm not here to do that a lot. I'm more of a short term dude than a long term dude, but um, this is the first month, and I like seeing that, right? The first month, the volume has gotten over the 50-day line or 50-month line, right? So there's some interesting things happening on the longer term views. At the minimum, all that we've been doing is breaking off five and flying, right? So I think this was probably some like anticipation that Trump would probably win. This was, oh no, the elections was November. Yeah, it was around, yeah, right. So like this is the anticipation that he's about to win. This is him winning. This is him coming into office, and then really over the last, I think it might have even been over the weekend, or maybe it happened on Friday when this volume came, there was a big Trump mineral headline. All right. I have absolutely no idea if it had anything to do where their land is. I have absolutely no idea if it will truly impact them or not. All I know is drill, baby, drill. And Trump's talking about like digging for minerals and expanding that, right? So buy the rumor, sell the news, and volume is king, right? Volume is queen for my ladies. Look at this volume. Obviously, it doesn't compare to the early 2021s, but let's just like get rid of that. Let's get rid of some of that early 2022. This is by far the biggest volume in roughly the last 3 years, right? Since this spike right here in a single day. Did this one get over? This one did not get over. This was a single day volume spike in March of 2022. Outside of that, this was the best 2 days and sustained 2 days, and Monday was better than Friday, right? So volume is really loud here. I'm liking this candle. Look, obviously it's a really high 85 RSI. Obviously we're starting to get really far and high up from the 8, and this thing kind of tends to go away from the 8 and back to the 8, away from the 8 and back to the 8, away from the 8 and back to the 8, right? Away from the 8 back to, you get the point, right? So I don't know if that's going to happen right now. For now, look, as long as this is over 107, there is a lot to like with NAC. All right. I would start to get worried under 107 because the next place down is going to be like 98 cents. So that's probably another 10%. From there, if you lose 98 cents, that's where I'll be real scared because I think I would come all the way down to like the 80s. But realistically, it actually might be really hard for this thing to lose 107. And I mean, hey, what are you doing? And if you look at it, let me just kind of zoom in to here, right? There's not a lot going on here, right? Like there's a line probably right there. There's a line probably right there. I can already see it. We're basically living somewhere near that first one, with 148 being the next one right here on the daily, right? When you start to look at the weekly, look, there's some silliness. And I don't want you to start thinking like 20s and this and that, right? But my goodness, there's a lot of red, 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 green, 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 red, red. Like this is one to just keep an eye on. All right. We have broken all five and started to fly on the weekly, on the daily. And now the monthly is getting into an interesting place where I gotta wonder if we've just broken the 100 and want to come to the 200 up there, right? So, drill baby drill is what this one is, right? So this one might be the only one I feel could maybe do okay even if the market comes back down, because this one has a small like buy the rumor sell the news kind of juicing this, right? Like look, I'm not here to talk about politics. I don't know anything about politics, for real, for real. I'm expecting Trump to say, "Let's drill," right? Drill, baby, drill. And oh man, I think it's an easy phrase to put a lot of fuel into some silly rumors. All right, so let me know your thoughts. Let me know your opinions, even if you disagree. Oh, I appreciate you so much.